Good evening, or afternoon, or morning. I am Angel Rivera. I'm the host of Angel in the Afternoon, and this is my special guest with me. What do you want to call yourself?
Mrs. Witchy Perfect. Everyone knows me as Mrs. Witchy Perfect.
There you go, Mrs. Witchy Perfect.
Mm-hmm.
So, how are you this evening?
I am good. Had to run around, go to go get some food, so we didn't starve. But here I am, and you know, cooking.
Yeah, great. I mean, I'm completely running late as usual. I was like, oh man, I have to do this, I have to do that, and I have to do this, and I have to do that, and then it's past 7 o'clock, and I wasn't even ready. It's like, up here as usual. So it's like, here we go. But I'm here. I'm always fashionably late, so it's like,
Like I said, Jimmy Dore is too. I mean, how long do we wait for that man to come on? Right? Am I right?
well, yeah, I mean, well, yeah, I mean,
I'm always
but
like,
I
come
don't,
on, Jimmy, let's go.
yeah, I mean, I don't usually like being late, but it's like it was 6:45, and I hadn't shaved and I hadn't set anything up yet, so I'm like, uh-oh.
And we just got
And
home, and I was like, oh, I gotta put on makeup. I gotta do this. I gotta do that. Oh no.
oh yeah, so I wasn't the only one this morning, but yeah, I mean, I try not to do that, but most of the time I end up running pretty late, so it's like I'm usually like 5 minutes late to start up the show, but I mean, that's the way it is a lot of times with me. So hope everybody's had a great week or week. Weekend's coming up, I mean, it's the I'm usually on Fridays, so it's like, yeah, weekend. You see me, the weekend's pretty much coming up. So on this network,
I have to work tomorrow at my other job, so I know how that is.
uh,
And we're actually starting to get busy, so I work on computers for a living,
yeah.
and I just had a gentleman come in. He's like, "Can you clean my computer?" I'm like, "Yeah, yeah, okay. I'll stick you to I'll put you on the list." But at least we're,
Well,
getting business, so
yeah, that's true. So yeah, so you mostly host a wrestling podcast, so
yep.
you want to talk about that real quick? I mean, you can go ahead.
Sure. So everyone knows me as Mrs. Witchy Perfect. I also can't talk. Um, I host Kurt Hennig Was the Best, changed my mind. And I mean, I'm on episode, I just recorded episode 21, and I do kind of talk about the whole Vince McMahon thing in
Yeah.
episode 20 and 21. But I'm actually going to drop episode 19 here soon. And currently, my current
Hmm.
episode 18 is at 1629 and counting. So a lot of views, still
Wow.
growing, and I just think that well, basically, we in the podcast, what we do is we basically either talk about him or we do watch-alongs to his matches. 19 episode 19 will be we're watching along to basically Survivor Series 1992 when he was with Randy Savage. So he was a tag team with Randy Savage. So we'll be talking about that,
Yeah.
and we'll be going over the interviews with because it was him and Savage and Razor Ramon and Ric Flair. So we have so much stuff coming up. I just also did well, see, Bad Cookies won my trivia question contest. So I actually read his question on, I think it's episode 20. And also we do a watch along to WrestleMania 5 with Mr. Perfect. So
Yeah, I mean, okay, I know that you and Kit Cabello had a conversation a few months ago, so I watched that. It was like, oh, interesting.
yeah, he, I had just kind of like, oh, I wish I could have Kid on. We could talk about wrestling. And he was like, okay, challenge accepted. I was like, wait, what? You mean it? He's like, yeah, sure, why not? I was like, all right. So I actually had to sit there and think, what am I going to ask him? I didn't even know what to ask him. So And I know he likes ECW and WCW or ECW, and I was more like the Kurt Hennig, WCW, WWF. And
Mhm.
so, and actually, I watched the debate too. And here's what's funny: I actually came up with more questions to ask him on February 10th. So I have like 25 questions and counting of like, we're not going to do them all, of course.
Oh yeah, I mean that's fine. I mean I'll be there too, so it's like,
Yeah, so it's going to be a triple threat match with
mhm.
you and Kit, and you're going to. I'll just ask questions, and we'll literally just shoot the breeze about wrestling, like Kit and I did the first time for like 2 hours, 3 hours, however long it takes. But yeah, I sat there and was like, oh, that would be a great question. Oh, that would be a great question. Oh, that would be a great question. So
Yeah.
it's going to be. I have other things coming up, so I have you and him on the 10th. And then on the 24th of February, I have a gentleman who created my theme song. That's a Rumble exclusive only. So if you guys could just follow me on Rumble, uh, links will always be in the description if you need to go to my videos. I'm trying to get to 100 followers on Rumble right now. So
Yeah.
it's new and exciting, and it's gonna be where it needs to be.
Yeah, I mean I'm why am I forgetting what I'm about to say? I just completely lost track of about to say.
It happens to me all the
Oh,
time. Either that or I'm just like I
yeah, I
can't,
mean it's I
talk.
just yeah, I was like, I don't know what I'm going to say. But yeah, I mean I'm gonna be on with you February 10th and it'll be fun there and I don't know what else I was gonna say, honestly. But yeah, I mean, it's well what's funny is I'm gonna explain how you coming on came about basically last week. Uh because I was on last week. I was talking about the whole Vince McMahon thing and I think it was mastermind something or I forget.
Mastermind hour.
That's it, yeah.
Yep.
And he or she, I don't know exactly who, but he said, "Oh, I briefly talked about I want to host a wrestling podcast, but I have nobody to do it with, so it's like blah, I'm kind of do that." Then he suggested, "Oh, what about Witchy Perfect?" And I'm like, "Oh yeah, I know her, but I haven't asked her, and I'll probably ask her eventually. I'm not going to deal with it right now." And then you DM me right after and said, "Oh, I'll do it with you." I'm like, "Oh, how did you know?" Well, Mastermind came to me and asked me whether I was interested. And I was like, "Oh, okay. Well, there it is. That's how that came about."
Yep.
And
Yeah.
I ended up saying, "You got to come on the show and we talk about it." The next week is like, "Okay, sure," and that's how this ended up happening. But yeah, that's how it ended up happening. So
Yeah, because like he's like, I was talking about you. I'm like, oh, all good things, I hope. He goes, yeah, yeah, yeah. I was talking to Angel, and he's looking for a co-host. I was like, well, sign me up. I'll sit here and blab about wrestling for 2 hours, 3 hours. You know, that's what I do on my podcast anyway. But it's mainly like about Kurt Hennig, or if he's wrestling Bret Hart, we'll talk about Bret Hart. Of course, his best friend was Rick Rude, so we'll talk about Rick Rude, because I do have a few Rick Rude fans out there too. So just trying to make everybody happy, and we just dropped one about Carrie too. Um, in fact, that's the newest episode, is about Carrie and his match at SummerSlam 1990, because their match actually made me want to watch wrestling in the first place. Seeing Kurt when I was only 4, even though I was only 4 at the time, I was just like, wow, he can really wrestle.
yeah, I mean, I was like, yeah, I was never as a kid, so I never appreciated him as I would now. But it was like one of those things where he was just there to me as a kid, but I never really paid attention. I always paid attention to like the big stars, like the the Hogans and the Warriors and the Bret Hart. I mean, guys, the big ones. Like
The big
I,
ones.
I would I would I would appreciate Kurt Hennings around today because I look in that more. But 20, 30 years ago, I was like, ooh, look at the stars. Oh, Kurt Hennig. He's great, but the stars. Here we go. He's the one. He's the one. These are the ones being promoted.
Yeah,
Kurt Hennig is just there. I mean, I didn't
just
appreciate
there.
him as well as I should have. All
And I
right.
think he sort of got that some of the fans were kind of overlooking him, so to speak.
Yeah.
Everyone sort of overlooked him, but if you say Mr. Perfect, they're like, wait, I know that guy.
Yeah.
Really? I'm like, yeah.
Mastermind's here, but he's busy. So thank you for joining us, anyways. Listening.
It was all thanks to you, Mastermind.
But yeah, I mean, it's like I could talk about that all day. But I assume that you kind of know the story about the Royal Rumble '91 and how
Hmm.
that came about and how Hogan screwed over Mr. Perfect.
Yeah. So, well, it was more Vince at the time because, of course, Vince had the final say. And yeah, no,
But
I wasn't happy about
no,
that.
because I was like I was reminded of that by somebody else who told the story. Some other wrestler is like, oh yeah, Mr. Perfect's supposed to win the '91 Rumble, but Hogan came in and said, "Oh, that doesn't work for me, brother."
Yeah, that doesn't work for me, brother. And I'm just like,
And didn't.
why
I'm like,
not?
I'm like, you're building up a new main event heel.
Yeah.
You can work with him. You can beat him every night. It's not like like he's gonna win the title, even though he probably should have, but he's not gonna win the title. So that's
Well,
somebody new to work with for you to beat. So I don't know why it didn't work for him, but
no, and that's it was because Hogan had went to Vince and said, "Oh, he's not in my league." Ric Flair had done the same because actually Kurt was supposed to come back sooner than he did, and oh, hi CBC. Sorry, I just kind of saw that on the screen.
that's fine.
But
I put
yeah,
it up
like
there.
so yeah, behind the scenes, it was Hogan that kind of X'd the whole thing because they had, and according to Brett's book, so I have Bret Hart's book and
Hmm.
I was reading it. I should really finish it, but he had said that they were kind of pushing Kurt in '89, so that's why they had some good matches. He talks about in Pittsburgh they were kind of off, but in Toronto where they had a great match, and I have it. I'm so glad I
Yeah.
got it off of YouTube because they literally took it off for copyrights. That's so
Oh,
dumb.
yeah. They.
But I have it, and it's him and Brett in Canada, and it does go to a draw. But it's such a great match. They were so well suited for each other, and that's why they talk so highly of each other. If you've ever heard an interview with Kurt, which I have, he talks highly about Brett. And I know I saw there was a message about Rick Rude. Yeah, I actually found because I heard it on the podcast for Jim Cornette. Jim Cornette has several podcasts.
Yeah.
And he Brian Last was talking about there's a letter out there that Kurt wrote about Rick Rude. And I was like, well, I got to find it because, that's pretty cool that he would talk about his best friend like that. And it was right after Rick had passed, too, on my birthday, which really stinks. But
Yeah.
so I decided for a lot of my Rick Rude fans that I would actually read that letter. And I got through it, but it was a little tough because,
Hmm.
I do watch a lot of Rick Rude, so I have a lot more Rick Rude coming. I would like to watch along to his Super Pose Down with the Ultimate Warrior, and I always like kid with my fans that I think the guy who won wasn't even in it. And that would be Kurt. For those who don't know, it would be Kurt. Actually won the Super Pose Down, and he wasn't even in it. So, but yeah, that Royal Rumble, we're also going to do the next episode I have lined up is pretty much we're going to do Survivor Series 1988 when Kurt and Rick were all on the same team. It was 5 guys. So it was Rick, Andre the Giant, Dino Bravo. Oh, I know I'm going to get this wrong. Rick Rude and Harley Race. That was a good one. I almost forgot
Yeah.
all that.
I mean, it was Rick Rude was I've heard and read plenty of stories. He's a badass. I mean, he was a straight up like that.
Yes.
Everyone was scared of Rick Rude. You piss him off, like
In the letter I read, Kurt would say, you know, if you looked at the woman that Rick was with wrong, he would fight you. He said pretty much Rick liked to fight like I like to play golf. I was
no,
like,
no, he was
okay.
legit. He
Yeah,
was
even
that.
Brett's book. Even Brett's book, he talks about how they were trying to, like, they would get in a hands and knees position, and they were trying to get them on the ground. And Brett said the hardest person to get on his back was literally Rick Rude. So, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, when I was a kid, I mean, I didn't think much of ravishing Rick Rude. I mean, he was more like a. My mom loved him, of course, but it was like I'm not surprised by that. I mean, it was like, oh yeah, I can tell why, but I didn't. As a kid, I was like, again, like Kurt Hennig, I would have a lot more appreciation for him now, as I when I did 30 years ago. But yeah, I mean, a legit badass. I mean, I was listening. I think it was to Eric Bischoff. He recently,
Oh boy.
I one of his podcasts where he was talking about Rick Rude and how he was legitimately scared of Rick Rude, and I was like, oh yeah, and not surprised. I mean, it was like I think one time he specifically talked about was when Rick Rude left WCW,
Mm-hmm.
and Ric Flair was the booker, but Ric Flair didn't want to speak to him. Ric Flair was scared of him too, so he was like, I had to go get the U.S. title from Rick Rude because he just left WCW and he had the
and,
U.S. title. So it was
right,
like,
right.
oh shit, yeah, I got to go to Rick Rude's house now. And Rick Rude had the U.S. title next to his guns in his car, so it was
Yep.
like, here's the U.S. title, here are my guns. It's like, oh, you gotta be kidding me, man.
Yeah, and he had been drinking too. I think Bischoff said. Yeah, I heard that segment where he
Mm-hmm.
apparently Rick had been drinking, but he said, "Go ahead, take it, Bischoff." And he like reached down, and Rick didn't do anything. Yeah, I heard that one too.
Yeah,
I
according to
also
Bischoff, his
heard,
guns were.
yeah, yeah. He wasn't so sure. Did you hear the story of Rick Rude? And this, and everyone's gonna laugh at this one, but it's a Stone Cold story actually. Steve Austin, or Steve Williams, as we know him. But it's Stone Cold Steve Austin had gone hunting with Rick Rude, and Rick Rude was not a hunter.
Oh.
Not a hunter. He was more of a fisherman, Stone Cold says. And well, if you love Rick Rude, you're gonna love this Rick. His name is Rick Solis. Okay, Rick Solis.
Yeah.
You're gonna love this little story. Now I'm gonna put this in with I'm gonna do another episode, and it's just like the stories of Rick Rude, because there's a funny one with Jim Cornette. But this one is the Stone Cold. He went hunting because Paul Orndorff had just these acres of land, and he would actually let other wrestlers go hunting. Paul Orndorff was a really nice guy. I have heard nothing but great things about him. So they actually went. Hi, Golden Monarch.
Hey, Golden.
They actually went hunting together, and Austin said they were on a 4-wheeler together, and Rick had a 22. Austin said, and
Yeah.
he literally they stopped because they saw a hog, and Austin said this was like the mother load of hogs right here. So Rick went to, cock back the gun and then shoot, but nothing happened. It just went, okay. He did this 2 more times, and it just went. And Austin said, wait a second, open up the barrel. Let me see the bullets. He got the wrong bullets for the gun. He must have just saw 22. And he didn't look further, and he got the wrong bullets for the gun. I said, he could have hurt himself. He literally could have hurt himself if he had discharged that gun and it backfired on him. Oh my goodness, Rick could have hurt himself. So
No,
I'm going to try to find that, and the funny story with Jim Cornette, of course. If someone finds that on eBay, please let me know if you can find this.
I can't. That's funny. I never heard that one. I mean, I've heard a lot of wrestling stories. Like, oh, that's a new one.
The one with Jim Cornette just got me every time. I did put it on my my X, but it's apparently Jim talks about actually he was in the locker room with Rick, and there was a photographer there too. And so the photographer was, taking pictures of the wrestlers, taking pictures because they would sell the 8x10s, right?
Yeah.
And he said that they were just getting ready to shoot, but they were switching the position for Jim, and Jim was kind of like, positioned. And then apparently Rick came up and shows his bare naked ass. I'm not kidding. Bare naked ass. And then they shot the picture. And Jim was telling Brian, he's like, it's probably on eBay or something. I'm like, if someone finds it, you let me know. Apparently there's a picture of Rick Rude's bare naked ass. And Jim Cornette goes, ooh. So it looks like he's getting ready to pucker up and kiss Rick Rude's ass.
I remember that one now. I mean, I forgot about it, but it's like
anybody who watches Jim Cornette, I mean, you will hear the funny stories about Rick Rude. There was they answered my question about Curt Hennig. That was episode 2, I think, on my podcast, and it was just like, he's like, well, yeah, I wish I could have known Curt more, but it was more like what kind of ribs were done, and I kind of heard Cornette talk about it before, but I was just like, well, let's just talk about, instead of stupid wrestling today, let's just talk about Curt Hennig, because it was around his birthday 2 years ago.
No.
Yeah, so I'm gonna do a special birthday to him too.
Yeah,
this year.
That's nice. Vince McMahon's evil mustache is back. He was here last week, so it's like, he claims he has the picture framed in his house. So it's like, there you go.
Of Rick Rude?
Apparently so. That's what we're talking about.
That's great. I was like, I said on X, if anyone finds this picture, you let me know. Because that's funny. Because the way that Brian, or it was Jim who framed the question, he's like, guess whose bare naked ass was here? And Brian goes, I don't know. I'm like, do you just go around and just pull people's pants down and identify them by their asses? What are you talking about? And trust me, I just heard and this is so funny. Like, I did a collection of Curt's ribs. That's episode 14 for those who would like to check that out later. Episode 14, and I put in a collection of just these wrestlers talking about Curt and his ribs, right? Well, now Barry Darso, who was Smash in Demolition, he just came out with another one. Apparently a stewardess, she pissed Curt off, and Curt took it in his own hands. So I'm gonna have to do like an ultimate collection of stuff. Yeah, that is right, Rick. They were big time ribbers. And really, I wish they were kind of alive so I could ask them what ribs they pulled on each other. With Brett, I think it was he actually cherry bombed Brett's mailbox. Curt did.
Oh, wow.
I have heard some really weird stories and some great stories. Usually they're always, I miss Curt, or, with the episode 13 when we did the Shane Douglas question, because Shane Douglas answered my question. He was like, he really was the bee's knees. He was the shits. He was the shit, Noah. He said, no, he really was perfect, and he really was who he said he was, and he had nothing but great things to say about Curt.
Yeah, I mean, last week I was talking about the Vince McMahon lawsuit, and it just came out at that point. So that's where Vince McMahon's evil mustache came from. Some created an account, like, here we go, let's go with it. So whoever behind that account, just brilliant. But nonetheless, I mean, I was wondering what you thought of the lawsuit, or whether, what's going on with the WWE and stuff and all that stuff with Vince.
Yeah. So here's my take. And as I said on my episode, my newest episode that I just got done recording. Now I'm always going to be ahead because I'd rather be ahead than be behind.
Yeah.
um, I look, I get it. He's a creepy, dirty old man. Okay, I get that.
Hmm.
And he probably did half that stuff. I mean, I read the messages that was also put out, and some of
Yeah.
them I didn't want to read. I was just like, nope, nope, not going there. No.
Yeah.
But the message that she put back saying, "Hang on, baby, wait a week and then I'll be ready." I was like, well, that doesn't sound like sexual assault to me. That kind of sounds like, wait a week and I'll be ready, right? So it kind of sounds like she
Yeah.
was consensual. The other one was he was begging her about Johnny Ace. Just have breakfast with him or talk to him or something. Oh, he always runs at the mouth and stuff. It just sounded like he was saying, "Oh, he's an asshole. Just ignore him." That's what I got from the message. He was just
Yeah,
saying,
well,
Johnny Ace is just an asshole when he drinks, and he likes to tell about you and tell about me, and he one of these days he's going to lose his job because he can't keep his mouth shut. And I don't think it was he was threatening her. I just think it was, oh, Johnny Ace is an asshole when he drinks. Okay.
yeah,
Go ahead.
yeah. I mean, he probably did. Even if he did a tenth of what he said that the lawsuit said he did, he's kind of fucked. He's never coming back to WWE at this point.
Yeah, no, and
I
neither is
mean,
Brock Lesnar. Nope.
oh no, I mean, he was in the plans for WrestleMania this year, but
Yeah,
once that
they
lawsuit came out and they go like, oh yeah, by the way,
Brock
this girl
Lesnar
who
was in it.
sued Vince, she's a apparently in order to sign an extension, Vince handed Brock this girl like, oh
Hmm.
yeah, you want to play with her? I mean, if you sign, you can play with her. You know, what I mean, here some
Right,
hot pics of him, her, and stuff. You know. Then
right,
for some reason Brock wanted to get her to urinate for him in a video. She did it, so it's like,
right, right,
yeah,
right.
that's kind of weird, dude. I mean, you need this is just go away, you know.
Well, and here's the kicker: Rena, who was his wife, she was Rena Mero. Now she's
Yeah,
probably Rena Lesnar.
she's
Was
if you wrestling
Sable.
fans, yeah, know her Sable, yeah.
Yeah, they know her as Sable. So, um, she actually left Mark Mero for Brock Lesnar because she
Mm-hmm.
was messing around with Brock Lesnar. I just heard an interview with Mark Mero. He was talking about this, and I was like, "Oh my gosh, that's awful." But because he was really in love with her. I mean, he was
Yeah.
really in love with Sable, or Rena is her real name. And what happened was, she ended up leaving him and marrying Brock Lesnar, and now Brock is messing around with her. I'm like,
Yeah.
well, what goes around comes around, Rena.
Yeah.
You did it to Mark Mero, now it's happening to you. How does it feel, huh?
Mm-hmm.
But
I mean,
I'm sorry, guys.
mm-mm.
Oh,
That's history.
I was just gonna say, um, the thing is, the stuff I read is that she was in a high-rise apartment building where he owned the top floor in the penthouse.
Yeah.
Now, Angel, you and I, do you think if I lost everything, and had to claim bankruptcy and lose a house, which apparently happened when she lost her parents? Now, I wouldn't wish that on anybody. I mean,
Yeah.
I love my dad because my dad's not like my mom. My mom was physically abusive sometimes and very mentally abusive, but I wouldn't wish anybody to lose both their parents. Okay, but when she supposedly filed for bankruptcy, she lost the house and lost everything. But where did she get the money for a high-rise apartment building? It's not like you just go from losing a house to now you're in a high rise with Vince McMahon. I mean, if she
Yeah.
was out on the streets, right? If she was in a
Yeah.
cardboard box, I would say yes, she was down on her luck.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, no.
That's I was thinking that like, how
Hmm.
did she end up in a high rise apartment building when Vince McMahon's one of her neighbors? You know, I
Right,
mean
right,
I came across as kind of like strange,
yeah,
even though the lawsuit it claims that, oh well, she was down on her luck, she couldn't get a job, you know, so
yeah,
the
Eh,
manager of the building is like,
right.
oh, just talk to Vince, you know, he'll give you a job.
And she wasn't qualified for anything. They just
Not in
everyone in the
WWE.
office,
Yeah.
right? Everyone in the office just knew her as literally Vince's flunky.
Mhm.
So some of her story doesn't hold up. I'm not
Yeah.
saying that Vince didn't sexually assault her. If that's,
Oh,
I mean, because none of us
yeah.
were there, but
Uh-huh.
I don't. I hate when people and they do this to all women, and I don't like that. I will believe all women as long as there's evidence to support that this woman needs to be believed. If there's evidence
Yep.
that says she's just a major hoe, sorry, I'm not going to believe her anymore. I just think that this is what that is because everyone's starting, oh, poor her. Yeah, oh, poor her. She was in a high rise apartment, not in a cardboard box living on the streets.
And she happened to be neighbors with
And
Vince
she
McMahon,
happened to
and
be
I'm like,
neighbors with one of the
like
richest men in the
how
world.
poor was she? You know, where if she happened to be
How
his neighbor, you know,
Yeah.
or her neighbor.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
I mean,
that's go
Rick,
ahead.
Johnny Ace's lawyer is claiming that Johnny was a victim of McMahon, as well as saying he was directed to do these things to her. So Johnny Ace, of course, is throwing Vince under the bus, like, oh,
Of
in fact, it
course.
wasn't me, it was Vince. You know, he made me do this shit to her. You know, he
Yeah.
confirmed everything was true, but it's like, oh, well, he made me do it. You know, what are you talking about? Had nothing to do with it. Absurd. I don't believe that for a
I
second.
don't believe no.
He
Johnny
was
Ace.
McMahon's lieutenant for years. You know, him and
Mhm.
Vince were like thick as thieves. You know, so
Well, and as Jim Cornette would say, the only reason why Johnny Ace had anything to do with the WWE is because of Vince McMahon. That's the only reason why he got into the business in the first place. But what is so messed up about the whole thing is literally, I mean, and I said in my podcast, you have one finger pointed at someone and you have three pointed back at you, like Jimmy says. You know how Jimmy
hmm
Dore's like,
yeah.
and says those little innuendos. Um, and unfortunately, Vince is at the crux of this. But it's hard for me to believe her story when it at first she was having consensual sex with him, and then all of a sudden a year later he was sexually abusing her. Well, then why didn't you tell somebody? Oh, and by the way, she got $1 million for she was supposed to get $3 million to sign an
hmm
NDA. Oh, against her will. Yeah. Mm-hmm. But she got a million of it, and now all of a sudden she's coming out saying, "Oh, by the way, he sexually assaulted me, and he, you know, sexually harassed me and raped me."
Yeah,
Wait, wait,
yeah, if Vince didn't stiff her and the other $2 million, this lawsuit
right?
never been filed.
Would it
I don't know
have
why.
would it have
I don't
come
know
to
why he
light?
stiffed her.
Yeah, yeah,
That's one of the dumbest things he could have done. Is like, I'm not paying. I'm not paying her, pal. Like,
yeah,
fuck her.
right, right.
I'm like,
I said, is she going to give the million back now? No, of course she's
"Mm,
not.
yeah.
Because these
So,
kind of women make me upset. Okay, these are women that don't want to get a 9 to 5 job like I did and bust my butt
mm-hmm.
for my son. They just want to, whore around and they want to sleep with every guy and have sugar daddies. Great. If that's how you want to run your life, then don't come back and say, oh, the sugar daddy, by the way, sexually assaulted me. No, honey, that's not how the world works. But give me $1 million, honey. I'll tell you what,
Mm-hmm.
I'd clean up the homeless around Lancaster County. I'll tell you that much. I would
Yeah.
not, because she just wanted to live off $1 million because her parents were loaded.
Well, they had to have some money for her to have that apartment in that building.
Right. Right. Where did
Yes,
she get that money?
like the lawsuit make it seem like she happened to be in that house, and all of a sudden she's pouring out of luck. Oh, here, talk to Vince McMahon. He'll give you a job, even though she doesn't really
Absolutely.
qualify to do anything WWE. So, what was she gonna do? And you read the lawsuit. The very first
Hmm.
time she meets Vince, allegedly he was in his underwear.
Right.
Like, here, hey, sweetheart, how you doing? Like, come
How you
here,
doing,
give me a
pal?
hug. And she stayed there. If it were me, like I said last week, I would have turned right around and left. It's like creepy old guy in
Yeah.
his underwear. You know, it's like, let me get the fuck out of here.
It's like your grandfather coming to you and he forgot to
Mhm.
dress or something. And you're like,
Yeah.
hi, give grandpa a hug. No, that's okay, grandpa. See you
hmm
later. But it just sounds all suspicious to me. I mean, I'm not saying that Vince didn't do that. I mean, the funniest part and the most ridiculous part, I think, was that he had dildos named after wrestlers. I was like,
Allegedly.
I'm like, are you freaking
Hey,
kidding me?
hey, here's Saba Simba, pal. There, take it.
Oh my
I'm like,
gosh.
come on. I,
I was
any
just like,
if I would believe that from anybody, it'd be McMahon. It's like he's crazy.
but
Like
you would
nobody
think,
else would do that.
well, right, but you would think that he would have pocket pussies or something, not dildos. I was just like, maybe McMahon's bi? I mean, that's
Well,
how
they've
he
been
sort of came up with Goldust, is that he
yeah.
had his first gay encounter.
Uh-huh.
Jim Cornette talked about that.
So does Scott Hall, I think, or Kevin Nash, one of them.
Yeah,
They
yeah,
were
yeah.
there when Vince told the story. Is like, well, pal, I was in a car. I went hitchhiking, and this man started touching me up and down. My first homosexual experience.
And all I could
And,
think was, did you say no? Please don't touch me?
and it's like, and that's kind of, and then what was it? No, it's in Scott Hall. Something to the effect as opposed to the last experience you had. I think referring to Shawn Michaels, but
Oh my.
yeah,
well,
because
well, I heard
go ahead. Yeah.
the story with him and Sonny. So Sean and Sonny. I actually, from Sonny's side, from Tammy's side is her name. I actually heard it from Tammy. She's like, "Oh yeah, he pursued me." I was like, "Oh wait, there's something with Shawn Michaels and Vince McMahon?"
You never heard that one?
No.
Allegedly, Shawn and Vince were gay lovers. That's why Shawn got that big push in the mid '90s.
What?
Allegedly, I mean, I can't. I'm not saying it's true, but I've heard that one. It's like, I'm not surprised that was the case because there's no way Shawn Michaels better wrestler than Bret Hart. I'll tell you that much. Even
Yeah,
Bret Hart is
right.
like, even Bret Hart was like, maybe there could have been something because he spent long time in Vince's office. That's all Bret said. It was like, Bret was
Wow.
saying, yeah, there could be something to it.
Well, I know, I saw Hitman Wrestling with Shadows, and Brett had talked about how Sean wanted him to say he was gay as a promo. And I was like, why would he have you do that if you know he's not? I mean, because as far as I know, Sean was messing with Sonny.
Yeah.
And then also there was a rumor about the British Bulldog and Sonny, but I think that was
Yeah, I
just a
heard that
rumor.
one.
Yeah. But it was, I mean, ooh. Wow, I never have, and not in my lifetime. I guess I didn't get too far into Brett's book. Oh boy.
Yeah, there was a lot of rumors out there between Sean and Vince, and it was like, oh, maybe. I mean, shit. I mean, Sean was getting pushes that he shouldn't have. I mean, I don't
That's
think
true.
I don't think he should ever been WWF champion, beat Bret Hart. I was like,
Yeah.
I didn't like Shawn Michaels as a kid. You tell you it's Bret and Sean. I was like, oh, Bret, no doubt about it. He's the man, not fucking like pretty boy Shawn Michaels. I use all right. I'm gonna be fair to myself. I'm not gonna use it here, but I kind of use gay slurs against Shawn Michaels. But don't judge me. I was a kid and it's the '90s, so it's a different time. But
To be honest, if you actually watch some of the first episodes of Raw, and crazy as that might sound, it started in 93.
mm-hmm.
So Raw started in 93. Excuse me. And if you actually go and look, it was in the Manhattan Center
Yep.
with New Yorkers. And the whole time during the whole Perfect, so Mr. Perfect also was against Shawn Michaels at the time. It was right after WrestleMania 9. In fact, he was with Luger, and Luger and Shawn were talking in the background, and Luger, he gets Luger, and then all of a sudden Shawn Michaels starts attacking Mr. Perfect. So it's around the Mr. Perfect Shawn Michaels thing that this all takes place. And I'll be darned, the whole crowd is screaming, Shawn is gay. I'm like, they're not saying great. They're saying Shawn is gay. Shawn is gay. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is 93.
Yeah, it was a different time in America. I mean, it was like the Sean is gay thing, and I was open. And
Yeah.
I remember seeing. I think it was around that time, a little bit after, where Sean starts, making fun of a fan and using and doing this shit, like that fan sucked dick, basically, like, and he did it too well too. I was like, you did that way too well, Sean.
Really?
He's doing this, but he did it so well that I'm like, are you sure you don't have experience with that, man? I mean, I can't do it nowhere near as well as he did. Like he was trying to make fun of the fan and called the fan
Yeah.
gay, and he was pissed. But it's like he did it way too well. It's like, oh, okay, are you, did you have experience? I mean, I guess. I mean, none of my business, but still, it's like you did that way too well.
I mean, to be honest, it's like, I just was like, I was like, Sean is gay? Really? You're chanting that? But, and they would always, well, with Mr. Perfect, it was different. It was always like, he's perfect. He's perfect. He's perfect. And I'm just like, yeah. Come on, a little louder, a little louder. Like hear it in the stands, you know? But yeah, they would chant, Sean is gay. And I was just like, maybe there's I know Sean was married to a woman. I don't know. I have Sean's book. So, Rick said Vince probably had a thing for Lex Luger too. He got pushed. That didn't work either. Yeah, he was trying to push Luger as if he were Hogan.
Yeah.
But he wasn't Hogan.
Yeah, the Lex Express, American Hero, all that shit. And I'm like,
one of Kurt's promos was about that in '94 when he supposedly screwed Luger out of the title shot. When Kurt was special guest referee at WrestleMania 10, and he was like, "You're just mad because I wasn't, Yankee Doodle Dandy for you." Just the way he says it, I'm just like,
well, that was ridiculous. I don't know what Vince was thinking there. Like, oh yeah, pal, we're gonna turn you babyface, and you're gonna be Hogan 2.0. You'll love it. No. Luger didn't want to be Hogan. I mean, it was obvious.
Yeah.
It was just phony. His performance. It was more like, "Hey, get on the Intrepid and body slam Yokozuna. They get a title shot at SummerSlam that year," which he lost, of course. No, he won. He won by countout. I remember now, and it was so ridiculous as a kid. It's like I watched this. I'm like, he lost the title. He didn't win the title though, and everybody's celebrating, and there's fireworks, and there's confetti, and Luger's like this. But I'm like, he didn't win the title. Like, why are we celebrating like he won the world title? He didn't. Yoko's still the champion. And you see Yoko walking with the kind of like the belt like this while everybody's celebrating in the ring, but he didn't win the title. What were they thinking? Celebrate over the top celebration? I never know, but
yeah, that was Luger came in as the narcissist because at WrestleMania 9 he was with Mr. Perfect. And there's a funny story about that too. I should find it. It will be in my ultimate collection of ribs, trust me. But it wasn't a rib. That's the funny part. It was just like Kurt. What happened was Luger says that WrestleMania 9, he was cool as a cucumber because he was working with Kurt. Kurt knew what he was doing. They had talked about it. And beforehand, and if you actually watch his promo at WrestleMania 9, which is hilariously funny because he can't say the narcissist, he says the Lexorcist. He keeps saying the Lexorcist, the Lexorcist. I mean, and then Mean Gene goes, the narcissist Lex Luger. He's like, I'm gonna go out, Gene. I can't handle this. And then you hear when you hear Mean Gene talking, you can hear Luger. He's like, I can't say Luger. I can't say the narcissist.
The narcissist, that was or is kind of a difficult word to say, especially for a lot of wrestlers. We're like, the what? Yeah, it's one of those things where they couldn't spit it out. Yeah. Bobby the Brain Heenan, when he first debuted, called him narcissist or something like that.
Narcissus, yes.
Yeah, and, like.
Well, and the thing is, what's funny is when they got out there, Luger was saying, yeah, okay, so we hook up. Him and Kurt hook up at WrestleMania 9, and he goes, and Kurt goes, what are we doing? What are we doing, Luger? What are we doing? What are we doing? What are we doing? And he's like, what do you mean? What are we doing, man?
I trusted you.
Match. Yeah.
You're the wrestler here. I'm just a big.
Kurt totally blanked out. He totally forgot the match. He was so caffeinated up. He was just like, let's go. And totally forgot the whole match. Now, if you watch the match, and we're going to do a watch along, I promise my people, we will watch along to it. You don't really see any like, oh crap, I forgot. You don't see him do that because Kurt was such a professional, but he said as the match went on, he finally started to remember, and they were just kind of calling spots at one point. And the interviewer is like, "Are you sure he didn't rib you?" And Luger's like, "If it was a rib, then he gets the Academy Award for acting." He said, "No, man, he just came back and he apologized up and down and said, 'I'm so sorry, I just totally forgot, totally blanked out.'" And I said in my one episode, I was just like, "How many times have I blanked out before a test?" I was like, "I forgot everything I learned. Crap." When I was in high school and stuff. And I can't tell you how many times I blacked out, just like, oh shit.
That
So
was probably
yeah,
that was one of the better matches of WrestleMania 9.
yeah,
I mean, that was a really bad WrestleMania.
it was, yeah, and it's because again, Hogan came back briefly,
Uh-huh.
and Vince wanted him to be the champion because he didn't.
That pissed me off.
Yeah, because
Mhm.
Brett was I
Brett
don't
was the
know.
champion heading to 9.
Hmm. And they wanted to build up Yokozuna because he was the big heel, even though he wasn't built like a Lex Luger was built. They
Mhm.
still were pushing Yokozuna to the moon for what reason I have no idea. But
Well,
go
this is
ahead.
93, 92,
Yeah.
93. So by this point, a
Mhm.
lot of the big muscle guys were gone.
Right.
So Vince was looking at the sizes. He's like, "Oh, he's huge, pal. So okay, let's put the belt on him. Make him the big champion." Same thing he did with Diesel later. Kevin Nash, he would put the
Mm-hmm.
title on him because he
Yeah.
was naturally big. He didn't need
Mm-hmm.
steroids. So it was like, "Oh my God, look how big he is. Put the belt on him." Because Shawn wanted to be champion first, but it's like he put it on Kevin Nash instead, and even Kevin Nash would fuck with Shawn, like, well, he'd look at the bodies, look at me, look at you, so small. He'd make fun of him. He was the champion first, and he never let him forget about it. So like, and that would piss off Shawn. He would go to Vince and bitch. Eventually got the title, but it took another year afterwards. But
Yeah.
but I digress. Let's get back to 9. Shawn, Brett was the champion. He drops the Yokozuna. Fine. I wasn't happy, but I got it. It's like Yoko's
Yeah.
huge. And Brett, and Fuji threw the mist in Bret Hart's face. One, two,
Yeah.
three. Like, okay, he got fucked. Then here comes Hogan. Like, what the fuck's
Yes.
Hogan doing out here? Go away, Hulk. I mean, you just had your match with Brutus Beefcake for the tag
Yep.
titles earlier that night. He should have been tag team champion, but Hulk, like, that doesn't work for me, brother.
Yeah. Right.
So they said Ted DiBiase and IRS returned the tag titles, and
Yep.
he becomes the champion again. And
Yeah.
Yokozuna, like an idiot, decided to challenge him, and Hogan punches Fuji, punches him, leg drop, 1, 2, 3. I'm like, what?
Yeah.
How is he the champion again? This
And
is
that was because
terrible.
Vince didn't want him to go to WCW.
Yes,
And what
exactly.
happened? He dropped the belt to Yokozuna at the King of the Ring '93,
And then went to WCW.
went to WCW anyway. Kit would be thrilled to hear this.
I mean, I didn't like Hogan again until when he became the third man a couple of years later in the NWO.
Yes, in the NWO. Yes. Yes.
I hated Hogan after that because what was supposed to happen, the story, I'm assuming, but the audience, Hogan supposed to drop the title back to Bret Hart at SummerSlam that year.
Yes.
They had this big match planned. Vince is like, we're gonna do Bret Hart versus Hulk Hogan. He's telling the story to Bret how it's gonna work, and Hogan's gonna tap the sharpshooter, Bret. And I'm like, did Bret actually believe this? I hope not, because Hogan never tapped out to anybody
Right.
or submitted to anybody at that point. And then, but Vince told Bret, "Oh, but I gotta talk to Terry." I'm like, "You didn't talk to Terry for telling me this? Why do you talk to him first?" So, don't worry, he'll accept. I'll make sure of it. Whatever. Then it's like, and a few days later, they did a photo with them holding the belt together for the poster. And then right after that, a week later, he's like, yeah, it's not gonna happen. Terry doesn't think you're in his league or some shit like that." And that's when Bret was pissed off at Hogan, and that started their drama that lasted years. But
he said the same thing about Kurt back in '89.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they were pushing Kurt to, and that's why they were pushing him. They were doing some vignettes. Like, Hogan, you can't do that. Him and the Genius, who was Lanny Poffo, who was Randy Savage's younger brother. So the Genius was Kurt's manager, and they were pushing him, and they were doing these vignettes. So he did the ping pong one, and he did the no Kurt Hennig. not Kurt Angle. I didn't like Kurt Angle. Sorry, guys.
Oh,
But no, we're talking about Kurt Hennig, who was Mr. Perfect at the time, and he was with the Genius. And unfortunately, Hogan went to Vince again and said, "Sorry, dude, he's not in my league. I can't do the impression. Sorry." I'll tell you who does a really good Dusty impression, and that's Jim Cornette. I'm just like, did Dusty walk in the room? What the hell?
yeah, he does. Well, Jim Cornette was around Dusty a lot, and they would, Dusty was the booker when he got his biggest push, and him and the Midnight Express, which is why, he's really close to Dusty, and
Yeah.
I
like
love
the
Dusty.
American Dream. I loved him. I loved his vignettes too. They were awesome. Because I think Linda McMahon is in the one with the plumber, where he actually takes the toilet out and moves the toilet. I think that was Linda McMahon.
I would have to rewatch it. I don't remember.
Oh yeah. So, but that's why you never saw Kurt in a title match with Hogan. It was Lanny who was in the one match, and of course Kurt knocked him with the belt, and Lanny won by count out. And that was I put that on my X. There was like a little bit of that too. And then of course, Kurt takes the belt back with him. He actually steals the heavyweight belt and then, puts it under his jacket and then, puts the robe around the Genius, and they go back and he just starts hammering this belt. Breaking it. He keeps saying, "This will never be a perfect belt until it's around my waist. I'm perfect, I'm the perfect champion, and this will be a perfect belt when it's around my waist."
Well, Hogan screwed around a lot of guys. I mean, it wasn't just Perfect or Bret Hart, but it was like
Jesse Ventura.
Oh God, that one. Yeah, and you can go back and I'm talking. And this is after he retired. I mean, Jesse retired. I mean, with the whole union thing after WrestleMania 2. I mean, Jesse's trying to unionize the wrestlers, and somehow Vince found out about it and fired a few guys, and that was gone. Then years later, when Ventura sued McMahon, Jesse asked his lawyer, to ask Vince about any unionization in wrestling. Is like anybody try to unionize on you, Vince? Like, oh yeah, pal. Jesse tried to do it once or twice. It's like, how did you find out about it? It's like, well, Hogan told me, brother.
Hogan, yeah.
He didn't say brother, but like, yeah, I mean, Hogan. He just said it like Hulk told me.
Hogan,
Terry,
pal. It was Hogan. I don't know. I can't
and Jesse was like, holy crap. I mean, they thought they were friends though.
Yeah, and that was a really big blow, which is when I talked to, and if anyone wants to go to my podcast, it's episode like 3 and 5 maybe, where I actually interview Jesse Ventura a couple times. It was back about a couple years ago on Clubhouse, when he was on Clubhouse with him and his son Tyrell, who never got into wrestling, but and I asked him about Kurt a couple times, so and when I would talk to Tyrell, I was like, well, I didn't want to mention Hogan's name because Tyrell had a club that was about movies and stuff, and I was like, well, I didn't want to mention Hogan, but Hogan's movies. He's like, yeah, don't say that to my dad. I'm like, trust me, I wasn't going to. I was not going to say that to Jesse. I was like, I just want to know what Jesse thought about Kurt, and literally he was like, yeah, Kurt deserved everything, every dime that man made, Mr. Perfect. He deserved. I was like, I love you, Jesse. Because I agree. I believe that he should have been champion, but he wasn't. And it's because of Hogan.
Yeah, nobody would have. Nobody, at least I've not heard a single person say a bad thing about Kurt Hennig. I mean, I've never heard it unless there's somebody I missed who hated him. But as far as I know, nobody said anything bad about him. And which shows me, he's a big ribber though. But other than that, I mean, people love that, about him. So it was
he was the king of ribs.
Him and Owen Hart probably would be like right there next to each other.
Yeah. Owen would torture Davey Boy, where Davey Boy would literally use a false name when he would sign into a hotel. Yeah. He would use a false name so he could stay away from Owen. I felt so bad for Davey Boy. I'm like, why would he do that? And it's just because I guess Davey Boy was just so easy to torment and yeah,
he would. What? if he just ignored it, probably would have like Owen would have gotten bored eventually. But no, he sold it, which is why like let me just keep going, you know.
Because even Brett talks about when he ribbed his own father in the hotel room. Damn, oh, it got me again.
Oh,
Stu like slams the phone down. Damn that Owen, he got me again. um, but yeah, like and there's some really cool ribs, and then of course there's the Shane Douglas rib that I heard that I was rolling on the floor laughing. And for those who haven't heard it, you can go to my podcast, but I'll tell you right now. Of course, I don't sound like Shane Douglas, so sorry. But
I can't do his voice, but yeah, go
right,
ahead.
right. So apparently, they were all on a plane and they had been upgraded. All the wrestlers had been upgraded to first class, and it was one civilian or one non-wrestler, and the rest were wrestlers. And Kurt had the window seat, and then this guy was sitting in the middle or sitting beside him. And pretty much the guy just kept going, hey, I hate to bug you, but, and he would talk. And Kurt would be like, look, we have a taping. I need to get some sleep, if you wouldn't mind. And he's like, oh, yeah. So he's like, he kept waking him up. He's like, I hate to bother you, but, and they would, have a conversation. So, and Shane says, I mean, I know Kurt's going to rib this guy, right? Because he kept waking him up, right? So the guy goes to the bathroom on a plane. I don't know if I'd want to do that or not. I've never been on a plane, knock on wood, but I certainly wouldn't want to do that now. So he gets up to go to the bathroom, and Kurt just kind of looks back like this, sticks his hand down his pants, and and he wasn't the kind of guy to just go, hey guys, watch this, I'm going to rib this guy. Shane says. He just sticks his hand down his pants. He kind of, feels around a little bit, comes out, and he starts doing this to the top of the guy's glass because he had a glass. No. And Shane Douglas said it looked like chocolate on the rim of this glass. Well, it was shit. Mm-hmm. And oh, no. He said the guy came back and kept bugging Kurt. So, and he just does this a couple times, and then he just stops, and he does this a couple times, and Shane goes, I mean, he has to smell it, right? Because, yeah. I mean, if it's this close to your face, you would smell the shit, right? Well, yeah, and just as soon, Shane says, as soon as he thought that, the guy takes a swig, big swig, and go, excuse me, stewardess, can I have another glass? This one tastes like shit. Everyone's dying laughing. Shane Douglas has lost it, and he said Kurt had a jacket over him, but all you could see was the shoulders bouncing up and down. I heard that, I was like, yes, I wish I was there to see it.
Got him. I mean, that was, again, I think I've heard you tell that before, I guess, on your show, but yeah, but it's still funny. It's like, oh God, I mean, well, he got it, he got what he deserved, but yeah, I mean, it's like one of these things where it's like, I've lost track, but seriously though, I go like, Hogan is just too much, man. I could, how many, after I heard the Hogan and Mr. Perfect 91 Rumble thing, I was like, yeah, I mean, I don't know why Hogan didn't want to work with him. I mean, he would have bumped his ass off with Hogan, made like $1 million.
And that's what Kevin Nash had said, that if you actually watch those matches with Hogan and Kurt, you could see why Hogan looked good, because Kurt made him look good. He was bouncing around the ring, and he was, doing this, doing that. Excuse me. Sorry, I didn't mean to do that. But he was like literally bouncing around the ring, and even with the Ultimate Warrior match in 91 with Kurt. In fact, I just downloaded that off of YouTube. That you could see him jumping around, and he made people look good. That's what he was supposed to do. He was a heel at the time. Yeah. And so even Jim Cornette says, he could cheat his ass off when he was a heel, and he could, sell his ass off when he was a babyface. So there's a lot of I think it was a lot of jealousy there, to be honest. I just think Hogan knew that. I mean, Kurt was second generation, so he'd been in the business longer than Hogan. Hogan could sell. He could sell tickets. He,
Yeah.
Bobby Heenan. Sorry, Bobby Heenan talks about this. I saw an interview with him, and he's like, the reason why people were pissed off at Hogan is because Hogan could sell tickets. Well, yeah, no one's disputing that, Bobby, but the fact that he literally was so jealous of everyone because there were other guys that could sell too. And Kurt
Yeah.
was one of them.
Yeah, it's not like McMahon would never made Kurt Hennig champion, but at least they could have had great matches and and made Hogan look better. I don't. I mean, it wasn't like like mine. Just you were gonna beat him clean in the middle of the ring anyways. It wasn't like
Mhm.
you were gonna put him over and make him champion. I mean, I'm sure that wasn't gonna happen. No matter how much people thought maybe it could happen, no, it was never gonna happen. It was just a match, where needed a small heel to work with, a bump for him.
Mhm.
Kurt was the guy, that's why they were pushing him. And then it was like, well, it doesn't work for me, brother. And Kurt's push was gone at that point, and he kind of became Ric Flair's flunky after that.
And it happened with Ric Flair too. Because Kurt was going to come back earlier than expected.
Yeah.
He was out for a year. Now the only reason why he came back and became a babyface was because literally the British Bulldog and Warrior had got popped for human growth hormones, which I
Yeah.
was told Vince did later. So isn't that kind of a quinky dink that you fire these wrestlers for human growth hormones and yet you did them yourself? Just a little tidbit there. But yeah, I had heard that hang on one second. Sorry.
No.
I had heard that people didn't like Flair when he was a booker because let's just put it this way, that if it didn't benefit Ric Flair, it didn't happen. And so he kind of screwed Kurt too, because Kurt was like, well, I want to come back. Vince is going to pay off my Lloyds of London policy so I can come back. And Ric Flair said that wasn't good for him either, that Kurt wasn't in his league. So here they had already made Flair, I think at WrestleMania 8, he was champion.
Yeah.
Oh, he had won the Royal Rumble, and then I think he became champion from Savage at Royal Rumble or
Yeah,
at WrestleMania. Or no, it was Brett.
No, Ric Flair became champion at Royal Rumble 92.
Yeah.
Because the championship was on the line because it was vacated. Because
Okay.
the year before, from Undertaker and Hogan, they kept trading the belts. So it was like eventually they became vacated and they're going to crown a new champion to a Rumble, which was Ric Flair.
Yeah.
And then Ric Flair went to Mania against Savage, even though it was supposed to be against Hogan initially. Vince had this big plan for Ric Flair, Hulk Hogan. And the match never happened because neither of them could agree on a finish. Of course not. It's like Flair didn't want to put Hogan over and Hogan didn't want to put Flair over. So it was like one of these things where it's like, fuck it, double main event, pal.
Right.
He gave up after a while. So it was a double main event, with Hogan and Sid and Flair and Savage for the title.
Right. And then Flair got the belt. And after that, that's when they did that storyline of, oh, well, when Royal Rumble came around, but when they knew that, I mean, Ric Flair was going to win the Royal Rumble, they said they had this like, oh, there's problems in the Heenan camp, and Kurt was at Bobby because they were saying, oh, well, if Ric Flair becomes the champion, then there was a clause supposedly in Kurt's contract that said he could never wrestle Ric Flair. That was that storyline was put out because Flair basically said, Kurt's not in my league and I'm not going to make him champ. I'm not going to give him the belt. And who told him that? Vince. Vince told Kurt that. And Kurt was like,
story.
Yeah, Kurt was like, what the hell, yo?
Yeah, that Hogan said about Brett, Vince is the one that told Brett, it was like,
yeah.
Hogan said you're not in this league, so we can't do the match.
And Hogan said the same thing about Kurt. Yep. A couple years earlier.
So Hogan became champion in WrestleMania 9. dropped it to back to Yokozuna or King of the Ring. So it was like, what was the point of him being champion then? He never showed up again on WWF television until King of the Ring when he dropped it to Yokozuna. I'm like, then why bother putting the belt on him? It was like a last desperate attempt to keep
Right.
Hogan, but
Yeah, because
Hogan
he
just
didn't
dropped the
want
title and
Hogan.
left.
Right. He didn't want Hogan to hightail it to WCW, and he ended up doing it anyway, which
So he
is
just
kind of sad. I feel sad for, Bret and Kurt at the time, because they were kind of taking the ball and running with it. It's
yeah, they
like
were
when
next
Stone
man
Cold
up.
Steve Austin, right? When Stone Cold became popular in 97 and 98 and 99, him and The Rock and Triple H had taken the ball and ran with it. They were trying,
And
they had been in charge of, now that all those other guys were gone, Hogan was gone.
yeah,
He was in WCW. And it's really, I thought it was really sad that, you could have made him champion just once, even for a few months. I mean, Kurt was beyond their league. You know how they used to call Lex Luger and say, "Oh, Lex Luger is beyond perfect." I'm like, there's no such thing. What are you talking about? But I think it was beyond. He was beyond them, and I would say
yeah,
that about Bret too. And that's kind of why I think both Flair and Hogan were jealous of not only Kurt but also Bret too. Because again, they were both second generation. Hogan wasn't
hmm
second generation. Flair wasn't second generation. I mean, Flair had been in the business longer because he was older. He
yeah.
was older than Kurt. He was older
He
than
started it in the early
Bret.
70s, I think. Ric Flair
Yeah,
started in his early 70s in the wrestling business. So he'd been in a long, long time.
right.
By the 90s, he was in nearly 20 years. So it wasn't like, he
Yeah.
was in a long time.
Yeah, he was
So,
50, 52, and Bret said, yeah, he has good cardio, because he would be on those stairs for like an hour. Can you do
yeah,
like a stairmaster for an hour? Well, Ric Flair could.
he was in great shape. I've heard that from other people. And I'm surprised that Ric Flair agreed to drop the belt to Bret Hart. It was like, oh, wow. He did
Well,
that
because he
match.
was
And
leaving anyway. Yeah,
yeah.
he was leaving anyway.
And then Bret tells a story about how Flair would screw up the match and make him look bad. And, so,
Yeah, yeah, he
and
was
he,
really jealous.
it was
Hmm.
like, and then they had meetings about it, and Flair's like, well, my wife's leaving me, and this, that, and the third. I'm having
Yep,
personal problems,
yep.
but and they talked about it. Okay, fine, I'll do better. And then he would continue screwing up the matches, making Brett look bad. And finally, he left, and it was like,
Yep.
and Brett's like, oh, thank God, he was killing me as champion. He was killing me off. I can't, nothing's going right in these matches. And he was
And
afraid he was gonna get the blame from Vince. So it was like,
and that was thanks to Kurt. It was that loser leave town match that we actually watch along
right,
to
yeah,
on my channel. We actually did a watch along to the loser leave town match between Kurt Hennig, or Mr. Perfect, and Ric Flair. I I was kind of glad Rick was gone. I'm not gonna lie, because everyone was upset because Flair took the NWA, who would eventually become WCW.
yeah,
But it was the NWA title at the time, and he took it to WWF. Just like
yeah,
Medusa had showed up with the
yeah.
WWF
I remember
women's
that.
title and threw it in the trash. So, in a sense, they were sort of, uh, I mean, a lot of people were angry about that. But then there was the one wrestler I saw. He was a champion of what? Oh, it was Ole Anderson. They did for kids who don't know this, there were territories, and Ole
hmm
Anderson was a promoter. He
Yeah.
does not like Ric Flair. He does not like Ric Flair. And he goes, he was a champion of who? A champion of what? He was a champion of nobody. So the hell with him. If he wants to go to take the NWA belt to WWF, let him. He was no champion. He was a champion of nobody. A champion that nobody gave a shit about. His words, not mine.
well, well, I mean, wasn't he a part of the Four Horsemen? And he hated Flair, and
Yes.
yeah.
And
Well,
you
I
know
don't.
why? Go ahead.
Oh, go ahead. Go ahead. No.
You know why um when Kurt went into WCW, do you know why he didn't join the Four Horsemen right at the beginning when he first
No.
came in?
Or at least I don't remember. He probably.
Because he one didn't want to, and because well, I mean, Flair had screwed him, so he was just like, well, I don't really want to join the Four Horsemen. So, and I think they had already talked with Eric Bischoff that he would go to the NWO, but they had a storyline where Kurt would just say, "I'm a free agent. I'll go to the highest bidder. I will join the highest bidder." And then, of course, you have like 2 weeks. Yeah, it was like 2 weeks before Fall Brawl. He joins the Four Horsemen, and that was done literally because, he hated Flair for what he had done, and he literally just said, "Nope, I'm not going to join the Four Horsemen." And then he did, but see, I think they messed that all up, and I don't know if I don't do a watch along to him joining the Four Horsemen 2 weeks before he turns on them. So we do the Fall Brawl.
Mm-hmm.
We do. We also watch along to when Kurt slams the cage door on Flair's head, because that was the heel turn to the NWO.
Yeah.
I think how they should have done it was not make him, but like let him join the Four Horsemen. So you have him joining the Four Horsemen in June when he came in. Okay, now you're a Four Horsemen. Now you get the Four Horsemen to trust you. You gain the fans. You make the fans believe that you're a Four Horsemen. And then at Fall Brawl, you shut the cage door, and they're like, "You bastard! We trusted you!" That kind of thing. It just it was like he was kind of, I don't really want to join the Four Horsemen. And then when they brought Arn Anderson out, and he gave him his spot. Oh my God. When they did that parody, oh my God, I can't tell you, Angel. I laughed my ass off, and I was only 11 at the time. I'm just like, that's hilarious. And what's funny is Flair got all butthurt about that.
Yeah.
One of the many reasons I don't like Ric Flair to this day is because he got butthurt over that parody. But they did it in WWF. I mean, they made fun of Vince McMahon, and no one said anything. No one said, "Oh, how dare you make fun of Vince McMahon, and you make fun of The Rock, and you make fun of this person and that person." No, they just were laughing. I mean, Vince was probably in the back laughing it up.
Yeah, he probably was. It was like, "Wow, that's all true, pal." Like, hey, I can't deny anything they're saying about me. So it's like, like Vince was good at. One of the things he was good at was making fun of himself, knowing when to laugh at a joke, about himself. He was willing to humiliate himself just to entertain the audience. And he did it time and time again.
Well, and what's funny is when they made fun of the corporate ministry, it was the corporation at the time. Yeah. Road Dogg Jesse James played Vince McMahon, and he had three little midgets behind him sniffing his ass.
Patterson,
because that was supposed to be Briscoe, Jack Briscoe, Patterson, and Sergeant Slaughter.
Slaughter, yep. Those are, at the time, McMahon's 3 big lieutenants, that were around him all the time. And Bruce Pritchard, too, but...
Right, but he wasn't really on
he wasn't
camera.
Not at that point, yeah. In the early 90s, he was Brother Love, but after that, he kind of...
Oh, my God.
Went
Did you
to the
even
back.
like him?
No, he looked like a clown, it was like with the red rosy face and stuff. I mean, apparently that was a rib, according to Bruce Pritchard. I mean, Vince said, "Oh, make him all rosy red," told the makeup girl, and she did it. It was a rib, but it stuck. He kept it. It was a rib on Bruce Pritchard from Vince, but it was like, well, it worked. That's part of his character, Ben. But
I didn't know that that was a rib. I just thought that they were making fun of televangelists.
Yeah,
let's be real, right? He was making fun of televangelists. Right.
Like the Book of Love, Brother Love, like,
I love you. I'm like, oh, Bruce, I think we need to see other people.
The rosy red cheeks was a rib, according to Bruce. Vince, told the makeup girl to make him rosy red, and that's how he became rosy red like that.
Far out. No, I didn't know that was a rib. I just thought, oh boy, he just went a little too much on the red. Much on the red.
And it was Bruce who said that on his podcast, I think. I mean, I know I heard it from him, but I don't know exactly where, but I did hear it from him. It's like, oh, that was Vince thing, I mean, he had the makeup girl paint me red, and That's how I didn't even know until after the tape, you know. So
Well,
yeah, that's how.
I had listened to a little bit of his podcast episode about Kurt,
Hmm.
and those vignettes with Kurt. It must have been Kurt was nervous. He must have been like really, really nervous because he said once when they were trying to film him, he would
Hmm.
screw up. Well, that's
Uh,
probably because he was like really, really, nervous, and then they had to
yeah.
actually tell Kurt, no, we're not running, and they actually were, and then
Uh-huh.
he would do it.
Yeah. I mean, I mean, those Mr. Perfect vignettes were like, oh, and I was looking. It's like he, like he could make baskets from God knows how far, and he could, he never made a mistake. Those vignettes were like, huh, interesting. As a kid, I didn't really. I was like, oh, Mr. Perfect. Okay, sure, yeah. Where's the Undertaker? So one of those things. It was like I never appreciated as much as I should have, but it's one of those things where it's like now I can, as an adult, I realize how good he was. And it was an early episode of Raw. I think I tweeted it at you where Kurt was like, I'm like,
Hmm.
I can't even keep up with him. The camera couldn't either. It was like
Yeah,
they were struggling to keep up with him. That's how fast he was. I'm like, wow. I mean,
yeah,
great athlete. Hmm.
he of course he'd been learning from a very young age. Him and Brett, that promo where Brett says, we've been learning wrestling since we were this tall, is actually very, very true. They were both in amateur wrestling. They were both
Hmm.
high school wrestlers. They did wrestling since they were 4 or 5. If you've ever seen an interview or a promo with Larry Hennig, he talks
Hmm.
about, oh, Kurt's been wrestling since he was in middle school. So they actually had probably middle school and high school wrestling, amateur wrestling. And then, of course, guess who talked his son into coming into pro wrestling? It was Kurt. Larry the Axe had talked him into it. There's actually an interview I want everyone to hear. It probably will be like we watch along to it, but it's when Kurt goes into Portland. So he was in Portland
Hmm.
wrestling in 82, and he goes in with his dad who does a promo. And I'm telling you, this promo is hilarious because he, like, excuse me, they were against the Army at the time. So it was Rip Oliver, Buddy Rose, and Matt Bourne would also sneak in there. Matt
Doink.
Bourne, yeah, Doink, who was Doink later.
Hmm. Yeah, it
Yeah,
became Doink much later, but.
yeah, he was with Kurt in
Hmm.
Portland, and they, excuse me, would have like little feuds on and off, but it was more like him and Buddy Rose would always
Yeah.
kind of, have a feud. But so Kurt says his spiel, right? And then they hand the camera, or they kind of like move the microphone, and Larry like pulls the microphone. He's like, "Yeah, I was up in Minnesota bear hunting with a switch." I went, "What? What the hell is that?" It sounded like, to me, it sounded like some kind of sexual position, some weird sexual position I'd never even heard before. I was like, what the hell is bear hunting with a switch? Is that you're giving the bear a chance? Well, what are you doing here? What? I asked Jesse, and Jesse said, well, it just sounds like, Larry was so tough that he would just smack the bear on the ass with the switch. I went, okay, whatever he wants to
well,
do.
well, I mean, whatever. I mean, Brett. I think Bret Hart's dad was Stu Hart, and
Right.
he ran out Stampede,
Yep.
and everybody could imitate Stu's voice. Stu was like, yeah, well, everybody can imitate Stu. It was like, I just.
Well, and they talk about, and even Brett talks about it in his book, where he would have a spatula and he'd be making eggs and stuff,
Uh-huh.
and he would pick up cat poop with the same spatula.
And then he would keep
I'd be
Stu
like,
Hart. He was a character, though. I mean, it was like, oh, cat shit. Yeah.
uh-huh. And then I saw that video of Brett playing with his cat, and I'm like father, like son. I mean, I can't say anything. I got 3 cats, so. And they bug the crap out of me. I'm just like, go away.
Stu, so is Stampede Wrestling.
Yeah.
Oh, Vince actually, Vince stiffs too hard for Stampede, so it was like he tried to start it back up again, and it
Mm-hmm.
didn't work. But that's another person Vince stiffed. So it was like then he stiffed the promoter out in Los Angeles. That was a whole nother thing. So it
Mm-hmm.
was like who Vince hasn't stiffed? I don't know. Kind of like Donald Trump. No wonder why they're good friends. Mm.
In Brett's book, he talks about how Vince kind of got all the promoters from the certain territories together and said, "Hey, I want to buy all your territories, so give me a price." And it was Ole Anderson who had owned South Carolina, and well, it's like a territorial on its own. So
I thought
the
Ole
certain
owned
regions,
Georgia.
yeah, like South Carolina and Georgia.
Okay, it was the one. Okay, one territory.
Yeah. So
Mm-hmm.
Ole had that. And basically Ole, if you know Ole,
Mm-hmm.
if you've ever seen any interviews with him,
Yeah.
he was kind of blunt and to the point.
Yep.
So he was, as someone told me, he was an acquired taste.
Mm-hmm.
But he basically told Vince McMahon to go fuck himself. I'm sorry.
That's fine.
Are we allowed to swear on this?
Yeah, I mean,
But yeah, he basically told Vince McMahon Jr. to go fuck himself. So what did Vince do? He didn't just go, "Oh shucks, can't have any of these
nope.
territories. I guess I'll just have my own." That his father and him had, which was the WWF,
Mm-hmm.
and that was by Vince Senior, and that was the New England. It was like the New England or the Eastern Seaboard.
Yeah, so it's New
New
York, New
York.
Jersey,
Yep.
and I think it was Maryland the lowest, and the rest of
Yep.
it north. That was Vince Senior's territory.
Yeah, including Pennsylvania, where I am right now.
Yeah,
So
I'm in New Jersey, so it's like, yeah, I the first time I saw wrestling was WWF, so that's all I knew until like I think when we got cable in the early '90s, where I saw WCW on TBS. It's like, oh, so they're wrestling. I didn't even know.
right. Well, and the first pay-per-view I ever saw, I told Kit this, was when I was 4, almost 5, and it was WrestleMania 7. I don't really remember Kurt's match, but I do remember Liz and Randy getting back together, and
Yeah, that
everyone in
was
the crowd were
mhm.
crying. Like women were, "Oh my god, they're back
that was
together!"
like that was the most memorable moment of that
Mm-hmm.
WrestleMania.
And that's
I
why I
think
remember it.
I think that WrestleMania was main evented by Hogan and Slaughter for the title.
Yes.
Okay, that's okay. Yeah, I
Yes.
remember that. Yeah.
And here's the funny part. I just recently, and I wish I could find it. I can't find the interview anymore. But I swear to your audience and to you that I did see this interview. Slaughter was asked what happened at Royal Rumble, why he became champion, and did he have any comments for that? And Slaughter said, I wasn't supposed to be champion. I swear to you, this is what he said.
I think I've heard this.
Yes. So Slaughter admitted that Vince didn't want him to be champion because he was the Iraqi sympathizer and getting a lot of death threats. I'll tell you what. I wouldn't want to be, but it's just Vince exploiting the war.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, Slaughter said that he was just going to pin, or he was going to cover the Warrior, expecting him to kick out. Okay. So the Warrior throws Sherry onto Savage. Okay.
Yeah.
Slaughter does what he does. And then the Warrior's like this, hunched over like this.
Yeah.
And Savage is supposed to hit him with the scepter.
With the scepter, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
He hit the Warrior so hard.
He knocked him out. That's what Slaughter said, at least.
That's what Slaughter said. Because that was payback for, he had broken Randy's arm. That's why Randy couldn't wrestle in the Royal Rumble, because he had broken his arm. And the Warrior, I was told, did that a lot. Which is why I don't really like watching his matches. Yes.
Andre, he nearly hurt Andre, and he broke Bobby Heenan's neck.
Yes, he did.
That was the reason why Bobby didn't have neck surgery for years, and he did it once he got to WCW.
Yes.
Because WCW actually gave him health insurance, so it was like,
yes,
so he's finally able to get neck surgery. And Warrior broke his neck. I'm like, how? why would Vince push this guy when he was that horrible of a wrestler and hurt guys? But
because he was the bodybuilder and Vince wanted to be
yeah,
big like
he
that.
wanted it.
So
He wanted a Hogan replacement because
right,
he
right.
thought Hogan would go away soon.
Yep.
So it was like, oh, Warrior, big guy, great. Make him the big star, and it worked. Actually, for a year and a half, he was really over
Yes.
until
Yep.
until he wasn't.
Right.
And
Right.
then allegedly, and I found this out recently. When you told about how Sergeant Slaughter said, "I wasn't supposed to be champion."
Yeah.
It was an accident. That finish.
Yeah, because literally he says he pulled the Warrior, and the Warrior was supposed to come back to life and shake the ropes and everything. And then he did a couple of elbow drops, and he said, I just covered him, and he was supposed to kick out at two,
He
at
didn't.
2.5, and he didn't, and sort of went,
Right.
oh shit, now what do we
Shit,
do?
I'm the champion.
I'm the
Like,
champion now.
and what's funny
Swear to
is,
you,
yeah,
I
Warrior,
didn't hear this.
like a few seconds afterwards, popped up and just went to the back. Like,
Yes.
that was
Yes.
weird. It was like,
and he actually had to be escorted out because people were literally pissed. I mean, they were pissed. Piper was pissed. Gorilla was pissed. Everybody was pissed off that he won, but he's like, what was I supposed to do? I thought he was going to kick out at 2.
he was supposed to. It's like one of these things where he couldn't just pop up. It was like, hey, that wasn't the finish. He just like, okay, like what?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And Vince always said this to other wrestlers, like, if a guy doesn't kick out, don't do anything. Just count to 3. It's his fault.
Yeah. It's his fault. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that was actually a botch, or what they call a shoot.
Yeah.
Because that wasn't supposed to happen. Because I thought maybe, well, they did the angle because they wanted, like what happened was Hogan
to face the heel and to vanquish the heel at WrestleMania. Yeah.
Right.
That's what I thought for years too. That I didn't know that wasn't supposed to be the finish.
Right.
That Warrior is supposed to retain. Then what was the plan WrestleMania then? Warrior against Hogan too? I wouldn't want to see that match again. I mean,
but he was trying to do that for years because he had such a success at WrestleMania 6 that he wanted that Warrior versus Hogan 2. But of course, Warrior screwed it up. Oops.
Yeah, and they couldn't put the belt back on him.
Right.
There weren't no pay-per-views every month then. It was like 4 a year. The Royal Rumble, WrestleMania, SummerSlam, Survivor Series.
Right.
So it wasn't like, oh, we put the belt on him in the next pay-per-view. It was like, no, I mean, once that happens, the next one's WrestleMania. So
absolutely.
Fuck it, we gotta call an audible.
Yeah, and that's what's. I've had people fully disagree with me, like, no, that's not what happened. I'm like, I swear, if I could find that interview, I think they took it down. I don't know why. It was such a great interview, but yeah, I swear to you, I heard Slaughter say his name is Robert. Yeah. I heard him say he literally was not supposed to win that match, but I mean, Randy just bonked him one. I mean, like I said, that was payback for Randy or Warrior messing up his arm, and he really messed it up. I mean, he couldn't wrestle with it, so Randy had to skip the Royal Rumble that year.
Which
that was the mysterious 18 that didn't show up. That was Savage. And the reason why he couldn't show up to this Royal Rumble, and a lot of people were pissed about this, the reason why he couldn't show up is literally because the Warrior broke his arm. Yeah.
Moron.
I know.
He just, when I was a kid, it was like, I would listen to his promo and it was like, it sounded good. Yay. I didn't know what the hell he was
saying. I'm like, no. What the hell is he talking about?
It was like he did multiple lines of cocaine, and then Vince told him to cut this promo, and that's how it sounded. What the hell he said.
There's some bloopers, and I wish I could find them. I have to find them somewhere. I think they took them off of YouTube, but there were bloopers with Mean Gene, and I mean, you talk about funny bloopers, man. There's one where Savage goes, doing the thing, bang, bang, and he just walks off the stage, and Mean Gene's like, huh? Okay. Oh my god, I laughed for like 5 minutes straight after that.
He wasn't supposed to bang bang. Like, that's not his
like, doing the thing, bang bang, and he just walks right off the stage. I'm like, what the hell?
Back to you, Vince, on commentary, something.
Yeah, and Gene's like, back to you. The other one I do have is the one with Kamala. Oh my gosh. If you know who the Ugandan
Uh-huh.
giant was, he would slap
Yeah, yeah.
his
Yeah,
belly.
he was yeah.
Um, oh my gosh. Some of those bloopers are funny too because he's like, "So Kamala, what's this shit about you missing some interviews or some promos?" He's like, I don't speak any English." I'm like, "Well, I didn't go to college. I went to a tech school, but I'm pretty sure that's English."
Well, I mean, I don't think Kamala spoke. I mean, that was like he kind of
He
had his
went, "Ugh."
yeah, yeah, he had his managers or who was it? Who was his manager?
Friday and
Yeah, and wasn't there a dude with
uh,
like a white mask or something? Unless I'm
yeah, that was
misremembering.
Friday. His name was
Oh, okay.
Friday. And
Okay.
then the other one was in '92. It was Harvey Whippleman.
Yes, that Whippleman.
Yeah.
That's who was with
Mhm.
him. Yeah.
And then they were like
Yeah,
abusing
and
him.
it was like the story, like
And then Reverend Slick came into it, or it's just Slick,
yeah,
because
he
he had
was.
been a manager before. He had a bunch of guys. He actually had Akeem and Boss Man on
Mm-hmm.
one side at one point. So the Slickster was actually a manager beforehand, and then I guess he just wanted to be on prime time and just didn't really want to manage anymore. But then he took
Yeah.
on the Ugandan Giant for a while.
Yeah, I mean, it
I don't know
was.
how long Kamala was there, but I know in '92 and '93, Kamala, and that abuse started like right after the coffin match that he had with the Undertaker, which is funny because and then you can hear everyone screaming, "You are a man! You are a man!" Just like, okay, we get it. He's a guy, right?
You got.
So, yeah, I can't tell you how many funny stories I've heard, and really, I watch YouTube videos.
Yeah, I
That's
do.
where I get them from. They just do interviews with certain
Yeah.
wrestlers. I don't like Diamond Dallas Page, but I've seen a lot of interviews with him.
Mm-hmm.
He talks about no one really went to Mean Gene's funeral, and I mean he wasn't pissed about it, but he sort of kind of was. When Mean
Yeah.
Gene died.
Yeah, I'm surprised nobody went to his funeral. None of the wrestlers from his time. A lot of them still alive, and
Yeah.
that was
I,
weird.
and I like how like they talk about him. Kevin Nash likes to talk about Mean Gene, and boy, that guy was funny. And I've seen a lot of
Yeah.
bloopers with him too. He was just a funny dude.
Yeah.
He does one with Greg the Hammer Valentine. He's like, here, Greg, come here, because Greg screws up in his promo and just walks off. He's like, wait, come here. And then Greg's first wife was in the background. He's like,
Uh-huh.
here, come here, Julie. Now, when you're sitting at home, does Greg ever go, pass the fucking potatoes? She goes, he sure as hell does. I was like, wow, that's classic. It's gold.
That
And
the
then
thing.
they're all just laughing.
The thing is, guys, especially back in the 80s and 90s, and before that, they were characters. They were wrestlers.
Right.
They were characters. They weren't.
Yep.
Now it's like wrestling is way too sanitized and way too corporate. I mean, I still watch it, but it's like none of these guys are really like characters. They're more like they're too afraid of their own shadow. If they say the wrong thing, they can get fired, and they'll get
Yep.
blacklisted from wrestling. So
Yep.
that's why they kind of, try to, protect themselves from, especially in WWE, protect themselves from termination. But
Yeah.
those guys
Look,
were characters. I mean,
yeah, and look what they did with CM Punk. CM Punk left WWF or WWE, excuse me, and he just never thought he would ever come back. And then he went to AEW, and that stuff happened with him. I know
that
Jim
was a
Cornette was talking
disaster.
about it was a disaster because really he didn't do anything. And then Tony Khan's like,
Yeah.
"Oh, I was feared for my life." I'm like, he didn't punch you in the freaking face, dude.
The worst that he did was maybe yell at him a little bit, how he wasn't a
Yeah.
leader and wasn't a man, he's a
Yeah.
whatever, and then walked off, and then that made him fear for his life, and that's when he
Right.
finally fired him, and was like, imagine Vince McMahon saying, "Well, I was scared for my life, pal. I had to fire you."
with a black dildo up my ass.
Yeah, fucking. I mean, you remember that wrestler Nails, right? The one with the
Yes,
prison
Kevin
suit.
Kelly.
Yeah, he nearly choked Vince to death. Like he was like he literally and Vince didn't say he's feared for his life even then. Like you don't hear Vince saying, "Yeah, I fear for my life, pal. He nearly had me." Like,
Do you know why? Do you know why he choked Vince McMahon?
oh, allegedly it was overpay or something.
Yep. But you
Yeah,
know who started that?
was
My
it
guy.
Kurt?
Mm-hmm.
Was it Kurt? Oh yeah, I think you may have mentioned this. I think with
He
Kit,
went up
wasn't
to
it?
Kevin. Well, because I heard it from Brian Knobs. I heard it
Oh,
from
the
Brian
nasty
Knobs
boy,
that,
one of the nasty
yeah, that
boys.
he
Yeah.
went up. Kurt said, the boss man got paid this. And he's like, bastard motherfucker. He was pissed. What I found out is that apparently Kurt and Kevin Kelly, who was Nails, they had actually rode together in one of the territories, and he had a brand new car with a little pendulum in the front.
Yeah.
And that pendulum got torn off. They think Kurt did it. I don't think Kurt did it. I don't think he would be that nasty. But he somehow the pendulum was like an eagle and it got torn off.
Yeah.
And Kurt said that someone else had done it, and boy was he pissed. It was Adnan Casey, who was Adnan.
Yeah, he was
Sergeant Adnan in the 90s with Sergeant Slaughter. Yeah, he was known as Adnan Casey in the territories and AWA territory. So this was Vern Gagne and Greg Gagne's turf. But apparently they say Kurt did it. I don't think Kurt would be that nasty. He could have done it. I don't know. But
he was pissed. Yeah.
But he was pissed, and Kurt said, "Oh, it was Adnan."
And he
somebody said it was
Adnan.
Adnan. Yeah, and he comes in and Adnan
he bashes
gets his coffee.
The wall.
He literally punched a funk ass guy.
Yeah, and he threw him to a wall or something.
Yeah.
So everybody knew how easy it was to work him up. So of course, here comes Kurt. Like, hey, Boss Man got this for your match, right? And you only got what? You better go talk to Vince about it. And
you better go talk to Vince about
there it is. There in history, and history immortalized where he just chokes Vince almost to death. And if it wasn't for some of Vince's lackeys that came in and tore
Slaughter,
him off.
I think. It was
Slaughter. Who else? Bruce Pritchard probably was there, I would assume.
Yeah. They asked Jerry Saggs if he was there. He said, "No, I just heard about it from." Supposedly, Jerry Saggs was near the door when it happened,
that's what I heard.
And he heard somebody call for help because I guess Slaughter and them were, "Oh no, we can't get this guy," but yet
they couldn't get him off.
Well, Nails actually said that Vince raped him or touched him inappropriately.
Yeah, which is why he went and called the police. So that's how the police ended up getting involved. Even though, and I'm like, yeah, that's kind of weird, but whatever.
No,
I mean that's how he got out of it, I guess, because they're probably gonna charge him.
Yeah, no, like they he was really pissed at Vince, but everyone was like, "Oh, Kurt's a shit starter." I was like, I mean, I would be pissed too if I found out that someone made more money than me and I was supposed to get a certain amount for being with them. I'd be pissed too. So it really wasn't, I mean, he just was trying to help out a friend because they were all friends. They had all been from the AWA territory, and there's a whole bunch of, if you do listen to episode 14 of my podcast, there is a Brian Knobs and a Jerry Saggs where they talk about how Kurt got them all liquored up with some and with some Percocet, what they would call a rainbow drink. So there would be a beer Jack Daniels and then a Percocet in it, and he got them all liquored up and he took them in his truck. Kurt had a pickup truck, I guess, and he had bottle rockets or Roman candles, and it was the 4th of July, so they knocked on the door. It was the Booker, Wahoo McDaniels, and Kurt
Mhm.
were having a thing because I guess he didn't like how Yahoo or Wahoo was a booking at the time. And so he said by the time the story got back to Vern Gagne, they had burnt down the hotel or motel where they were at, but they shot off these Roman candles into the room where Wahoo McDaniels and Ray Stevens were.
Like,
That was the rib. Like
what the
he's like,
fuck?
just go, go. When I say go, just launch them. Like, that's what Kurt said. Kurt said, when I say go, launch them, and boom, bang, boom.
Like,
It's
what?
what Jerry or Knob said. And then when they got back to Vern Gagne, they got fired, and Kurt was making faces at him in the window. So like they were watching Kurt make faces at him, and Kurt said that they looked like lost puppies who just lost their best friend. Like someone just killed their best friend, and that's how
Wow.
they looked. But they wanted to test the Nasty Boys to see if they would tell on Kurt.
Hmm.
So he tested them to see if they would narc on him.
Yeah,
So
yeah. Well, we need to make our announcement, which you haven't made yet. It's only 2 hours, and I got to wrap up soon. So we just,
okay.
we have to do it now. Me and Mrs. Witchy here, we're gonna start our own podcast soon.
Yes, we are.
So it's called, what did we say? Pro Wrestling Live. Why am I
Protest
forgetting?
Pro Wrestling Talk.
Talk. That's what it was.
Talk.
Sorry. Yes. So that's gonna get started up the next few weeks. So expect, we've got to decide the date and who's gonna do what, but we're definitely gonna do it, and we're gonna have, it's a bit of everything. We're gonna talk about today's wrestling. We're gonna do watch-alongs probably. We're gonna do story time, and wrestlers. We talk about different wrestling we did today.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe if we get some wrestlers on with us, that'd be nice. We'll see how that
Yeah.
turns out. But and stuff like that, and maybe surprises. I don't know. We'll see. But yeah, but that was our announcement. I probably butchered my way through it, but that's our announcement basically.
No,
So
no, yeah, that I was really excited when you approached me. I was just like, yeah, let's do this, because I kind of want to be like Jim Cornette, where and I was like, I said to my guy, I was like, oh, I'm gonna have to watch Modern Wrestling, crap, but that's okay. That's okay. I will
yeah.
muddle through it, and I'll just be like, why am I watching this? Because
Oh,
let me
I
just
I,
say up front, I don't like Chris Jericho.
I don't
I'm
either.
sorry, I cannot.
I
he
don't either. He's like,
I'm sorry. Yeah, I didn't even like him when he was in WCW. I hated his championship run in WWF. I thought that was useless.
even Vince. I think Vince told us. So I mean, or at least Jericho tells its story about how he found out he was going to be champion. Vince was just walking around backstage with Taker, and he's like, "Hey, Taker, you know how the business is going to be destroyed?" It's like, "How, Vince?" "Because we're putting the belts on Jericho." Ugh. And Jericho was sitting there and catering, and he looked, is like, "Me?" Like, that's when he beat Steve Austin and The Rock at the same night,
Yes.
and I'm like,
Yes.
I couldn't believe it. Like, he really beat it. It was ridiculous. It was like
Yeah.
Jericho was pushed as like a mid card guy.
Hmm.
Then from that to being champion and beating the two top guys in the company, I'm like, how the hell
And
did
now
that
he thinks
happen?
he's a wizard. I went, what the what?
I don't know. He's so many different nicknames. He's a mark for himself. He's one of these guys. He's like,
Yeah.
he's the wizard. He's the demo god. He's demo god referencing the ratings. Like when he's on the air, the demo. He's like he has the highest ratings or something. So it's stupid.
I
Only
don't think so.
only only marks that love AEW would know that.
Okay. Well, I'm
So
sorry if
he's
there are
that.
any. Right.
He's that. He's so many different things now, and it's like Tony Khan lets him do whatever he wants. So
Right.
sometimes it's ridiculous what he does half the time. Oh, and he looks like he's fat too and out of shape. He's fatter than me, and it's like, and I'm kind of out of shape, but he's fatter than me, and he's on television, like in winning matches too. I'm like,
Ugh.
Jericho won a match in 2024. Like he just won last week. He beat somebody on television. He
Oh my
beat somebody
god.
last week. Like some young guy, I mean, I'm not saying that young guy should have beat Jericho, but still, I mean, why is he winning in 2024 when
Wow.
he's so out of
Okay.
shape? But
Yeah.
okay, yeah, I mean, I get, I I've done with Jericho, but I can bash AEW all day long. I mean, I hate that. I hate them so much. All of them
It's
almost.
so easy. I mean, they literally got rid of their two top stars. So Cody Rhodes was the first one to go because I
Uh-huh.
was watching or I was listening to Jim Cornette at this time, and he's like, I mean, why didn't they keep Cody? Cody is a second generation superstar and did everything. He even set himself on fire for AEW.
Yeah, he did. He had a match with somebody where I forget who it was, but he went through a table and it was through a fire. I'm like, why the fuck's Cody doing that? I mean,
Right.
he shouldn't have done. He shouldn't even done it. I mean, what was fun? He was supposed to be a baby face, and the fans booed him every night, and it's like, but they never appreciated Cody. It's like, oh, he's a WWE guy, fuck him. Even though, yeah, he helped create the company, but he's a WWE guy, screw him. We love the elite. They're those marks, the Young Bucks and Omega
Oh.
and Adam Page and those fucking guys, and they all suck. But we'll get into that when we get our own podcast because I don't,
Yeah.
this is because I can't stand those fuckers either. And then he fired CM Punk. I'm like, what did he
Yeah,
do?
for that whole little thing backstage. But
Yeah, the
actually it was them, the marks. So like it was the Young Bucks and it was Kenny
yeah.
Omega who actually stormed into Punk's dressing room. I'm like, well, I'd be pissed if someone just storms in and starts beating the crap out of people.
So that
Yeah.
was the story. The Young Bucks and the Elite said, "Oh no, 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 we just wanted to talk," and Punk started it. Then everybody else said, "No, these pricks started it." They they
Yeah.
they burst into Punk's locker room, and of course they got their asses kicked because CM Punk actually did
Yeah.
MMA. He can defend
Uh-huh.
himself, unlike
Yep.
these three morons who stumbled their way in. Like, "Oh, you talk shit about us? Oh shit, we just." I think Matt Jackson ended up with a black eye. One of them ended up
Yep.
knocked out, and
Mm-hmm.
Omega got bitten. Like I think AC
By
had
the
bit him.
dog, right? There
Yeah,
was a
by the
dog in the room.
yeah, it was a dog. Yeah, it's like how'd you get bitten by a dog, dude? I mean, he's a tiny one too.
Well, and
It
he was
seems,
with his best friend's wife too.
yeah,
I
he
don't
was
remember her
there.
name, but yeah, she had a broken leg, so she couldn't really do anything, and they're beating him up, and yeah,
Yeah,
the I think did the dog get euthanized because
I
he
don't know
bit
what happened to the
someone?
dog. I don't
Yeah,
know what
I
I
hope
don't know.
not.
No,
I
I
hope
don't
not.
think
I don't
so.
like
But
hearing that.
yeah, after that, it was the incident in London, which ultimately got him fired with Jack Perry, Luke
Right?
Perry's son.
Really?
Yeah, it's Jungle Boy Jack Perry's Luke Perry's son.
Did not know that.
Yeah.
Far out.
That's why
Well,
I just call him Luke Perry's son because I have no respect for him. And he's a tiny little wrestler that he's a little prick too.
and Hook is
But
Taz's son.
yeah, he's Taz's son.
Yeah, from ECW. Oh, Kit would
Hmm.
be
Yeah,
ECW.
I'm sure when we bring him up, when we on the show together, I thought Taz was fine. I watched ECW back in the day, and I went to the ECW arena a number of times, which literally was a bar and like then in the seedy part of
Mhm.
Philadelphia. At the time when now Philadelphia is all seedy, but at the time in the early '90s, that was like the seedy part of town.
Yeah.
So the ECW arena was just a bar. I mean, that's really what it was, and it
Oh,
stinked. It stunk.
really?
It's like
It
100
stunk?
degrees in there. Yeah, but at the same time, though, it was fun. I mean, I liked it. I was a kid. I was a teenager, so it was like today.
Okay.
I probably wouldn't like ECW today, but then I did. So I'm sure. I'm not sure if Kit was still like ECW today, but I wouldn't. I think
Yeah.
they go too far. They went too far. But,
As I told Kit, I tried to get into it. I really did. And Kit had told me that the Sandman was really based off of Stone Cold. And the Sandman says, "Oh, Stone Cold stole my gimmick." I was like, I don't know about that. I mean, Stone Cold didn't really smoke on the air, but I mean,
and he didn't
there was
bash
a lot of
beers into his head too. He
yeah,
didn't
and
do
there's a
that.
lot of similarities. Kit was talking about the crucifixion angle in
I
ECW
wasn't. Yeah, I
where
remember that, but I wasn't there that night.
Stone Cold was up
Hmm.
against it on the Undertaker's little cross thing,
Yeah,
and they had Jeff Jarrett talking about this. I do watch Jeff Jarrett's podcast, even though I hated Jeff Jarrett. I like him as a person, but
yeah.
I didn't
My
like
my
his
mother
gimmick.
my mother got me into wrestling, and she loves Jeff Jarrett. So it was like,
Oh, really?
yeah, it was my mother who got me to wrestling. So it was
My
like,
mother hated wrestling. It was more my aunt and my
oh,
dad that got me into wrestling.
uh-huh.
Because we were over at my aunt's house when we were watching WrestleMania 7, and I just barely remember Kurt's match. Just I remember like a bunch of people running around, but I don't. And of course, Andre was there because I mean he was so sort of. I mean he was pretty much done, and he was upset with Vince that Vince had kept him off.
Yeah.
But I mean, Andre was growing so big that his back couldn't handle it.
Andre couldn't move. I mean,
Yeah, just
so
barely.
when he did that match with Hogan, WrestleMania 3, I mean, that
Yeah.
was like the biggest match of all time. He couldn't move then either. They had to
Yeah.
work the match around Andre, like what he can do, what he couldn't do. Hogan
and
had to run around Andre.
Right. And the whole thing with the Warrior, Bobby Heenan said he would, the Warrior would come at him and hit him, and then Andre would go, And then one
The
time
next
the
night.
Warrior just came at him full speed, and he went like this, and down goes the Warrior, and he's like, he looks at Bobby and goes, he's learning. Just
Yeah, I mean, the thing with Andre is you can hit him as hard as you want to, he wouldn't feel it. He's like, what? I mean, like fuck you, man. And then if you got pissed enough, he would just do that, and you'd be like, But yeah, I mean, I do have to wrap up soon because I got. But yeah, I wanted to thank you for coming on, and we're gonna talk a lot more when I go on your show and we start our podcast. But this is a great conversation. I enjoyed it. I'm glad you took the time.
Yes, I totally enjoyed this, and like I said, we could just go on for hours and hours and hours.
I know,
understand
that's
it's
why
only going to
it's
be
like
2 hours, but
yeah. So yeah, I usually go an hour and a half, but today is like it was too good. Like, oh, let's just go until now. But yeah, I wanted to thank you to come. Thank you for you taking. Jesus, I can't spit it out. Thank you for coming on my show. There you
at least
go.
I'm not the only one.
Yeah, I said times where I do that.
I do that too. That's why I always say if you subscribe to my Patreon for $5 a month, you will get a behind the scenes of how I do my show, but also you get a blooper reel. Because trust me, guys, I screw up all the time. I'm just like, oh, God, I was so good at this.
Yeah. And but all those links are in the description box below, so if you want to follow and subscribe, please do, because we're going to start our podcast soon. So it's like,
Yep.
but I've watched a lot of modern wrestling, and so I have plenty to say, so
and I'm gonna start. I'm gonna really start. I said I would never watch it. I would just get off the storylines off of Jim Cornette.
A lot of people do that,
right? But for you, Angel, I will watch modern wrestling. Although I'm gonna sit there and go, where is Kurt Hennig? What did you know? Oh, Kurt, why did you leave? Kurt, come back. And even his son Joe, not in wrestling anymore.
Oh no, his name was Curtis Axel at one point, and
Axel, that's right. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and they did nothing with him, and
they did
he
absolutely nothing with him.
Eventually just slinkered out the back door. Nobody noticed. I'm not sure he let go or he quit or what happened, but
I mean, he literally was. They weren't doing anything with him. I feel bad for him.
Yeah, I mean, he may not have been as good as his dad, but he was good. He was good.
Third generation, baby.
Yeah, I figured they would do something with him. I'm not saying he'd be a big world champion, but he was useful enough where you can do something with him. They put the Intercontinental title on him once. Maybe I remember twice.
Oh, are you kidding? Just once? Because they had Kurt was two times.
Yeah, they made him the Intercontinental champion and put him with Paul Heyman for a while.
Of course.
So,
just like they did with Lanny and Mr. Perfect.
They put Paul Heyman with him as a manager, but that went nowhere. Eventually, Paul Heyman was gone, and it was just him, and Vince lost interest and took the belt off him, and eventually he became a lackey for the Miz.
Right. Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah, he became and it was him and what's his face? Bo Dallas, who's IRS's son.
Yeah.
And Bray Wyatt too, who passed away recently.
Oh, Bo Dallas.
They were brothers.
They were brothers.
Son.
Yeah. I remember IRS. I did not really see Bray Wyatt, whose real name was Wyndham Rotunda. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Named after his uncle Barry Windham.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, it's that yeah. So that's what became of Curtis Axel, or
Oh,
eventually he was a lackey for the Miz, and then after
oh.
that he just kind of slinkered out the back door. I mean, I guess he's not wrestling anymore. I haven't really seen him, but much of him.
No, I
But
think he's more doing like wrestling cons and stuff. I don't know.
yeah,
I would love to talk to Joe. My fans know that I would love to talk to Joe Hennig. I would love to talk to Hank. I would love to talk to Amy.
yeah,
You know,
the
I've seen a picture of Hank. Oh my god, he looks just like Kurt. Like,
wow.
holy cow. That's awesome. But yeah, I would love to talk to those guys because if we could uh I did see the documentary they did for Kurt. And I'll just make this real quick.
Yeah, you do
But
have to go. But go ahead. Yeah.
I saw the documentary they did on Kurt, and one of the ribs on Joe was that Kurt would fart and leave the windows up, and he would lock the windows so that Joe couldn't lower the window.
Oh wow.
Thanks, Dad.
And on that note, we do have to wrap up. So I want to thank you for you coming on, and I'm gonna see you guys next week. And I'll be doing your show next Saturday, I believe it is, right? The 10th.
Yes, you and Kit. It's going to be a
Uh-huh.
triple threat match for my title. And we're going to talk about all kinds of stuff because trust me, I have a lot of questions.
And I'll have more time then. So if it goes 3 hours, whatever, it doesn't matter.
All
All
right.
right. Well, I want to thank you coming on. Thank everybody for watching. We'll be back next week with a new guest. So have a good night. Have a great weekend, and I'll